the love of my life. My 2 daughters. Nothing will ever be okay again.
I know. That Flash, the Flash from Earth 90, he looked just like my dad, Henry Allen. He was a resilient man. He spent years in prison for the murder of my mom, a crime one of my enemies committed and framed him for. Through all that, he never lost his light. Times like this, I try and do the same.
My father, Alvin Pierce, he was a good man too. Reporter. Spent his life giving a voice to the voiceless. He was murdered when I was 12. But I still carry the lessons he taught me to this day. I passed them along to my girls. My girls. Anyway, I get it. Look, I don't think Henry or Alvin raised any quitters, so we should honor their memory and rage against the dying of the light.
Dylan Thomas.
Well, all right, then, Flash.
It's Barry. Barry Allen.
Jefferson Pierce.
Welcome to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. I am half of your co-host, Perry Constantine.
And I am the other half, Derek Ferguson, coming to you from the center of the universe, Brooklyn, New York.
We had our Brooklyn episode last time. You're still trying to horn in on it, huh?
Absolutely, of course. I'm always going to give Brooklyn props.
But speaking of that, because we talked about Captain America last week, or 2 weeks ago in the last episode, and now you just posted something in the group about something related to that in Brooklyn.
Yeah, the Captain America statue.
Okay, so I saw this, friend of ours, Sean Ali, he posted it on Facebook. So what is this? It's at a Bed Bath & Beyond?
Yeah, this statue was made, actually this statue has been around for a while, because it was right down the street from me at the Barclays Center Stadium in the summer of 2016. Mm-hmm. And before that, it was in Prospect Park. It's been moving around Brooklyn to various locations ever since, for a while. And I had no idea that it was in this, it's like this whole complex called Industry City. That's not too far from me. It's about like a 20-minute drive. Mm-hmm. Not even for about like 10 minutes. But I did not know that the statue was there. The Captain America statue. I had seen it before back in 2016 when it was at Barclays. And like you said, Sean E. Ali, he posted on there and said, oh, well, it's at Bed Bath & Beyond. And the weird thing is that Sean lives in California.
Yeah.
And he knew about it, and I didn't know about it in Brooklyn. So, of course, I had to go see the Captain America statue again. And I took a whole bunch of pictures. And for all of you that are listening to this, if you go to our Facebook group, Superhero Cinephiles, you will see the pictures that I have up there of the Captain America statue.
Yeah, and the inscription on the statue, I'm reading it now, the quote from First Avenger, which we used as the title of our last episode, I'm just a kid from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And Hometown Pride, established 1941. And they also got a nod to Jack Kirby and Joe Simon there, saying that he created by them.
Yeah, there's a plaque that's on the side, which, again, I made sure I took a picture of that, folks. And if you go to our Facebook group, you will see that picture on there that Captain America created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. And on the front, it's got that iconic quote. The funny thing is that originally when Captain America was created, he came from Manhattan. He didn't come from Brooklyn. That's like a reboot / revisionist type of thing. Which, hey, I have no problem from. I have no problem with Captain America coming from Brooklyn. Trust me, I have no problem with any superhero coming from Brooklyn.
Do you know if it was the movie that did that, or if it was done in the comics before that?
You mean the thing with him coming from Brooklyn?
Yeah.
As far as I know, that was the movie.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because the Captain America as far as I know, and every other thing, matter of fact, he came from Hell's Kitchen.
Oh, okay.
He grew up, the comic books, he came from Hell's Kitchen, just like Daredevil.
Oh, okay.
They grew up in the same neighborhood, as far as I know, yeah.
That's interesting. I wonder why they decided to change it.
Yeah, so that was something that, as far as I know, like I said, and I always invite you guys to listen to this. Please, if I'm wrong, correct me. Mm-hmm. But as far as I know, that's something that they did, just for the movie.
Okay. Okay, good. So, how you doing otherwise today?
Otherwise, I'm doing fine. As I was in Manhattan earlier, which was always a nightmare for me, and I'm getting ready because I'm going to let you and the good folks listening to this in on something I don't usually tout. But next week is going to be my birthday. Next weekend, yeah, Saturday is my birthday, and I'm going to go see the the Birds of Prey movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it opens here in New York on Friday the 7th. My birthday is the 8th.
Okay.
So I'm thinking about calling Tom DJ. If he's listening to this, he's probably, because I've been calling him the last couple of days, and I haven't been able to get in touch with me. And we've been playing like kind of phone tag.
Yeah.
Where he calls me, but and I hear the message on my answering machine. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm planning on going and seeing that Friday.
Okay. Are you looking forward to it?
You know what? In a way, I am, because I'm one of the few people that like Suicide Squad.
Okay. I mean, I liked her in Suicide Squad, Margot Robbie.
Yeah. Well, I like her in anything.
Yeah, she's great. Yeah. Even in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which she had like nothing really to do, but she was still good in what she did.
Yeah. I mean, okay, there was a whole big thing made about her playing Sharon Tate in that movie, and like you said, even though I love the movie, she really didn't have that much to do.
No. And she was also in what was it? Legend of Tarzan, which she was really good in that.
And what was that movie she made with Leonardo? The Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen that yet. Actually, the runtime kept me away from it.
That was the movie that kind of put her on the map.
Okay.
Yeah, The Wolf of Wall Street. Yeah.
Yeah. See, it doesn't come out here until March 20th. So, and I don't know. It looks entertaining, and it's gotten good reviews, but I'm still puzzled as to why they're forcing Harley Quinn and Birds of Prey together.
Yeah, that kind of puzzles me too, because I said, well, why not just do a Harley Quinn movie? Yeah. If you really want to do Harley Quinn, why not just do Harley Quinn and just get it over with? And
at one point, like when this was first being talked about, they were actually going to call it Gotham City Sirens, which I think would have been much better. Yeah. Would have been a much better
because fit. This is not, because even though they call it Birds of Prey, from the just from the few pictures that I've seen and from the trailers I've seen, this incarnation of Huntress and Black Canary or whatever is apparently like nothing we've never seen before.
Yeah, same thing with Cassandra Cain, one-time Batgirl. Cassandra, yeah. So yeah, I don't know. But it's getting a good bunch of good reviews.
Well, I'm gonna go see it next Friday, and I will be sure to let y'all guys know how it was. I will probably write a review of it, and I will probably talk about it here. So we will see.
Okay, cool. There was something I wanted to mention too, something I had seen recently, but for the life, and I was actually thinking about it like all week. I'm like, oh, I got to remember to talk about that on the show, and I just completely forgot now. But anyway, today we're talking about. So last year, Marvel had their big crossover event movie in Endgame, Avengers Endgame, and then at the end of the year, DC said, well, we're going to do something similar, and they did Crisis on Infinite Earths with their TV properties. And that's going to be what we're talking about today.
Yep.
So,
and
well, first,
go ahead.
What was your, I mean, did you read Crisis when it was coming out?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I read Crisis on a month-to-month basis because I read the individual comics as they came out.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a revelation because, of course, I had grown up with this, thing with, I had no problem with the whole thing with the DC and their multiverse. And it was something that I grew up with.
Right.
Basically. So the concept of the multiverse was something, even though actually, to be honest, I did not become acquainted with the concept of a multiverse through DC Comics. I became acquainted with it through Michael Moorcock.
Okay.
In his, because, Michael Moorcock had this concept of the Eternal Champion.
Mm-hmm.
That it was one character that was doomed and fated all throughout the multiverse to become different heroes and to fight to preserve the balance between order and chaos. Mm-hmm. And everybody is acquainted, of course, with Elric of Meldemoe. But then there were other characters like Dorian Hawkmoon and Ulrich and John Dakar. And it was basically all of Michael Moorcock's heroes are the same guy.
Okay.
It's the Eternal Champion. And on different Earths, they fight to preserve the balance between order and chaos. Mm-hmm. So I was familiar with the concept of a multiverse, which actually, when I started writing my own characters and everything like that, it only made sense for me to put them all in the same universe.
Right.
Because I was familiar with the concept of, well, why have, different universes for, just make them all on the same Earth. So the whole concept of DC with all these different Earths, with all these different characters and different iterations of Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman or whatever, it wasn't foreign to me. And to wrap up this whole big ball of wax, when they finally said, you know what, we're going to blow up the whole thing and just demolish the multiverse and just make it one Earth and call it Crisis on Infinite Earths, it was a revelation. Mm-hmm. Like most things are when they first happen. Of course, now DC has diluted the concept because every time you turn around, it's another crisis.
Yeah.
But back then, there were lines around the block at my local comic book store to get the latest issue every month of Crisis on it. And I'm talking about the original one, folks. The original Crisis on Infinite Earths with Marv Wolfman and George Perez. Yeah.
Where he drew
people lined up around the block to get the new. As a matter of fact, people who hadn't read comic books in years, they went back and they read Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Yeah. And that book, the writing's one thing. It's it's a great story, but you want to see how skilled of an artist, what a workman like George Perez is. He drew every single character DC had ever published in that thing. And there were some pages it's hard to find a page in that book where you don't have a panel with at least a dozen characters in it.
And here's the genius about George Perez. He will draw two characters standing side by side. Mm-hmm. And I've noticed this. Let's say he draws Captain America and Hawkeye standing side by side, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Hawkeye's a little bit taller. And if you notice, George Perez will always draw him with his torso and arms more muscular than Captain America's. Mm-hmm. Because he's got to pull that bow.
Yeah.
Captain America is built more like an athlete. He's muscular, but he's like more athletic,
right,
looking than Hawkeye, whose arms is like. And you say, okay, and that's what George Perez. He will draw a dozen different characters standing side by side, and they all have different body types according to this superpower.
Yeah, not just differentiating them by costume, but by facial appearance, by body type. Right. The guy's a master.
I mean, just seeing the panorama of characters that he drew in Crisis on Infinite Earths, folks, I can't imagine anybody who's listening to this who hasn't read it. But if you haven't, then what you need to do is invest some money and go on Amazon and go ahead and get it. And don't get it for the electronic thing. Get the full-size book. Just so you can savor the artwork. Yeah.
I mean, I do have the electronic version, but but I did. Well, before I get into my Crisis story, what was it like for you, growing up with the multiverse and then having it taken away? Like, what were your feelings about that?
Okay, I thought it was a revelation, but I understood why they did it, because it just got too big and too complex and too out of hand. Much like on the TV series that we're going to talk about, but it just got too complicated, and they felt, okay, well, you know what? We just have to streamline it and just cut away all the stuff that doesn't work and just make it a lot more simpler for people, which they did. Until, like I said, then they went back, because now nobody understands DC continuity. They don't.
Well, I mean, it was confusing for me even before that, because even before Infinite Crisis and all that stuff, they were still playing around with it, because so John Byrne wanted to reboot Superman and Wonder Woman, and he wanted to do new origin stories for them and all that. But then you also had Batman writers, Green Lantern, Flash, Teen Titans, all those guys, they wanted to keep with the continuity. So there was it was a total mess, because Batman's continuity is all still in place. Green Lantern, the Flash, the Teen Titans, all their continuity is still in place. And then here comes Superman, and he's starting off from ground zero, and somehow this all has to kind of fit together. And it's caused so many ripples and so much confusion that it's hard to determine what is and is not in continuity anymore.
Yeah, because you know why? Because nobody wants to work together to build a continuity. Everybody wants to do their own thing.
Right.
See, back in the old days when it was the 60s and 70s, yeah, I know people gonna say, "Oh, hey, from the dark, what is back in the good old days thing," but there is something to say for people that all work together and say, okay, well, we're working in one continuity, but nobody wants to do that anymore. Everybody wants to, everybody wants to, okay, well, I want to do my version of Superman, or I want to do. That's why you get everybody rebooting everything, and every comic book series starts with a number one every couple of years, because nobody wants to build on what went before. They want to do their own version.
Another reason too, with just the number ones too, that's usually just comes down to the marketing department, because number one issues sell more than anything else. So that's why they roll out a new number one sometimes even in the same year they've done it. But yeah, and it became really confusing, and because I didn't really start reading comics until start reading them regularly and start collecting until the late 90s. And that was around the time when DC was starting to incorporate a lot more stuff from the pre-Crisis universe. Like, Superman became stronger. He started having his power level was more like pre-Crisis, starting to creep more into the levels it was in pre-Crisis. And then you had a lot of writers who were coming into DC who grew up with the multiverse like you, and they missed it, and they wanted to bring it back. So you had guys like Mark Waid, Jeff Johns, Grant Morrison. So they eventually get together and they decide we're going to bring back the multiverse. But then a few years later, they decided, nope, we're going to reboot everything again with the New 52. And then but still, you had that same confusion because you had guys like Grant Morrison was rebooting Superman and Jeff Johns was rebooting Aquaman. But at the same time, you get Scott Snyder, and he's basically like, oh no, all the Batman history is still there. He's like, I'm writing Batman as if all that history is in place. I'm not rebooting him from nothing. So it's caused it's even still, they brought back the multiverse. They got rid of the multiverse, they brought it back. They got rid of it, they brought it back. And DC continuity has just been a mess ever since the Silver Age, I think, because that's when they decided to introduce the multiverse concept. And I believe, I could be wrong, but what I think happened is, because back in the day, nobody really cared about continuity. Yeah, you'd have characters cross over and that, but continuity was not really a big sticking point. And then Stan Lee came along and Jack Kirby, and they put all their characters in the same world, and they had, Spider-Man trying to audition to be part of the Fantastic Four. You had Captain America being brought out of ice by the Avengers. Namor being found as a homeless amnesiac by the Human Torch, and so on and so forth. The Vision being built from the Human Torch's remains, and all this stuff. And then DC said, well, you know what? We should probably have some of this continuity stuff too. But they had problems because Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, they were part of the Justice Society in World War II and the Golden Age Flash and Green Lantern, but now you had the new Flash and Green Lantern around, and they were on the Justice League with them. So the question was, how can they make this work? So then they said, well, they each live on different Earths. And then that's basically how the multiverse was born. It was because DC wasn't really intended to be shared continuity in those days, and they just kind of tried to fit it all together somehow. And that legacy has pretty much remained, and that's why DC continuity has always been a lot harder to try and figure out than Marvel.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, because as you so accurately pointed out, it was something that I think that DC just fell into backwards. Mm-hmm. They said, okay, and then when they had the thing where, of course, we had the classic story where everybody agrees that it all started with the Flash of two Earths.
Right.
Whereas, and it's something that that I think that starts out the way that a lot of things do. They say, hey, wouldn't this be a cool idea if we just say there was a different Earth?
Right.
And then it just kept spiraling on from there.
Well, it's because it's like everybody back in those days. It was just like the old pulp books. Nobody expected these things to withstand the test of time. They were disposable entertainment. You buy a comic book for like a nickel, you read it, and then you give it to your friend or you toss it out.
Well, yeah. And that's what I always throw out to people when they talk about, oh, how cheesy something is. Oh, man, it's so cheesy and so corny. I said, yeah, well, they didn't expect that you would still be reading it 50 years from now.
Yeah.
They thought you'd read it and, okay, people for a month or two would read it and then they would throw it out. Nobody expected people to still be reading a Spider-Man comic from 1966 now and trying to fit that comic into the continuity of today.
Yeah, and it wasn't until like not even Stan Lee wasn't like in terms of series continuity. Like he had continuity, yeah, but it was more like sitcom continuity, where each episode is the same characters and there's some elements that carry over, but for the most part, you jump in at any episode of Seinfeld or The Simpsons. You can watch it no problem. You don't need to know the past several years of episodes.
Right. Well, you know what? Stanley took a lot of what he did, especially with Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. He took that from soap operas.
Right. Yeah. But then when you had a new guard of writers come in, like in the 70s, like Claremont and all them, then they started doing the long subplots spanning issues, and continuity started to become much more important at that point.
Right. Yeah, because that's what they knew. That's what they grew up with. When Stan Lee was writing Spider-Man, one of the major things at that time was soap operas, which which I tell people. I said Spider-Man is just a soap opera, especially when he was writing it like during the 60s and he was going through the thing with his girlfriends and with Aunt May and his job and everything like that. I said all that is soap opera stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hell, the X-Men is basically Passions. That supernatural soap opera.
Yeah. I mean, and it's funny when you look at it, when you say, with these guys, because even Chris Claremont, he did a lot of soap opera stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Because when he started writing the X-Men, soap operas were still kind of popular at that. Soap operas really didn't fall out of favor until like around the turn of the century.
And in fact, all due respect to Stan Lee, but I would probably credit Claremont more with that shift in the industry to doing more of the soap opera, the long-spanning storylines, because Stan's stuff tended to be, even with the soap opera elements, most of his stories tended to be self-contained.
Yeah, that's true, because, I mean, Claremont kept stuff going on for years and years and years. I mean,
Well, he had a trick, right? I remember seeing him in an interview. He did. There was a documentary about him called Chris Claremont's X-Men. And in this interview, he's talking about, he's with his, former editors, Ann Nocenti and Louise Simonson, and they're talking about how Claremont's whole shtick was he would always introduce these little subplots, right? He'd introduce something and then he'd keep a note of it and then he'd go on to the rest of the story. And the reason he'd do that is because when he hit writer's block, all he had to do was had to go pull out one of those subplots he introduced like 50 issues ago.
Well, yeah. Yeah, and you know what? That's a good trick that works.
Yeah.
And all of you writers that are listening to this, if you got a series that you're planning, that's a good trick that you could take and that you can use, Hey, it worked. However, but then but that's something that can also backfire on you, because I remember reading an X-Men and I would read in the letters page back when they still had letters page.
Oh, they still do.
People would remind Claremont of that shit. They would say, well, 20 issues ago, you had this in there. How come you haven't resolved it yet?
Oh my God, there's still stuff that hasn't been resolved.
Yeah. Yeah, which is why a lot of X-Men writers, they picked up on it after he left. And they said, okay. Well, and then what would happen is that Claremont would come back and then he would rewrite and retcon all that stuff. Well, that's not really what happened. This is what really, And again, like I said, you get writers that come in, and we know the egos of writers.
Yeah.
They come in and then they're not happy with what somebody else does. And then they said, oh, no. I want to do my version of it, which is, like I said, this is why we get all these different versions and iterations of Batman and Superman, because everybody insists when they come on, well, I want to do my version. I don't want to have to be bothered with what came on before. Even when we were writing fanfic, remember that there was some fan fiction sites that you couldn't write for them unless you agreed that you was going to pick up on the plot lines that the previous writer had done?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there were some people, there were some people who would refuse to, like they just would not do it. They'd erase everything that came before.
Well, yeah, exactly.
I mean, in some cases, they wouldn't even read what came before. They just say like, "No, well, I'm just doing my own thing."
There was some guy, they even refused to read. And no, I don't care. I just want to do my own thing. Which is why you had that thing that you had. I remember vividly at one time there was like a dozen different X-Men fan fiction sites.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because everybody wanted to do their version of X-Men, and they didn't want to be bothered with what the other guy had did. They just
the thing that I never understood about that was because we were operating in a small niche, right? The whole tenet of it was it's shared continuity. We're all playing in the same sandbox.
Yeah.
So I never understood why, if you just wanted to write your own X-Men story, you didn't want to worry about what other writers are doing, why are you even bothering with this tiny little site anyway? Go over to fanfiction.net, go to Wattpad, post it there.
Well, for me, a lot of times the challenge that I enjoyed was actually coming on after somebody else and seeing how I could make what they did work with what I wanted to do.
Oh, one of the reasons that my knowledge of Marvel and why I ended up being so well read in Marvel over the years was because I would see these empty titles and I'd want to go pick them up and look into what the past is. So I'd go back and I'd track down those issues, read them, and familiarize with myself with them, and then try my hand at writing the series.
Yeah, but see, you were an exception.
Mm-hmm.
There was some people that were a doozy, and I will never forget that there was some people that were writing fan fiction, and I would ask them, and I would say, "Well, how come you didn't write?" And they would say, "Well, I don't read what anybody else does."
Yeah,
which to me was a supremely arrogant attitude.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I'm concerned, because. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I guess it's because I just enjoy reading,
mm-hmm.
and I enjoyed reading what other people were doing.
Yeah.
And I didn't see anybody else as being a threat to me or a challenge to me. I honestly enjoyed reading a lot of other people's fan fiction stuff, like you and Barry Reese
mm-hmm.
and Russ Anderson and a bunch of other people. I just read y'all guys just because I enjoyed reading it.
Yeah.
But I knew that there were some other people. I'm not going to mention the names on the air, but there were some people that I talked to, and they said, no, they didn't read anybody else. Well, why? Well, I don't read. And they would say to me, well, why should I?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I know to leave you alone then, because me and you are not on the same level. And
exactly. Yeah.
Seriously, we are not on the same level.
Mm-hmm.
If you had that type of attitude, so
now talking about this series, like the DC CW or DC TVU, or I don't like calling it the Arrowverse because it's grown so big beyond Arrow now, even though it started with Arrow. And like I remember when the first season of The Flash, right? That the end of the season finale, when they had that reference to Jay Garrick and they had the Golden Age's Flash's helmet show up. And I remember all of us were like, no way, they're actually going to do it. And we all thought it was insane. We thought that was something that they would never do. We thought people wouldn't buy into the concept of the multiverse, the TV viewers.
Well, okay. You know why I think we should call it the Arrowverse?
Okay.
Because if anybody had ever told you previous to, the whole CW thing going on, if anybody ever told you previous to that Oliver Queen, the Green Arrow, would be the linchpin of the CW superhero universe, much in the same way that Tony Stark Iron Man was the linchpin of the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
Would you have believed it?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. So, so that's why I don't mind calling it the Arrowverse, because, yes, and I had a little problem with it in the beginning because, to me, it's like, okay, when Arrow first started, they strip mined a lot of Batman stuff.
Oh,
frankly,
yeah.
Because to me, it was like, okay, well, I see what they're doing. They're trying to do another Batman show without it being Batman.
Right. And, Green Arrow had some popularity. He was known to TV viewers after being on Smallville for 5 years or whatever it was.
Which, again, he was just a stand-in for Batman.
Right, exactly.
He was standing for Batman. But over time, they did turn the Green Arrow into his own character.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't just a Batman clone.
Right. I mean, he's still not the Ollie I love from the comics, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, okay, well, he's still a lot of there's a lot of Batman DNA.
Yeah.
In the Arrowverse version of Oliver Queen.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate the fact that they did do a lot with the character that I would never have expected. And I really respect the fact that they made him the linchpin. Like I said, if anybody told me that Tony Stark Iron Man would be the linchpin of the MCU, I said, really? I would have expected somebody like Captain America.
Right.
You know, that's the guy, you know, you wouldn't have expected Tony Stark, you know, but thanks to not only the way he was written, but the acting talent of Robert Downey Jr. of all people.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I honestly don't think it's going to be at least 20 years before we can have anybody else play Tony Stark Iron Man.
Oh, yeah.
Because we have to have this generation die off.
Yeah.
before they will accept anybody else as Tony Stark Iron Man. Yeah. Seriously. But this generation is going to die off.
It's also so weird when you think about how Arrow started off and how it got to this point. Because in the first season, Arrow was almost ashamed of being a superhero show. Right? Like, they wouldn't give him a name. He wouldn't wear a mask. He was just the vigilante. And
he was the hood.
Yeah.
He was the hood for like the first, 3-4 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until the second season, which, you know, I think not coincidentally was after Avengers came out, that then they decided, well, let's put in some more superhero stuff. And so then they brought in Black Canary. They brought in some more of the costume villains and that kind of thing. And they brought in Arsenal. And then the third season, when The Flash premiered, then it was just like all bets are off. And they just kept on adding more and making it and more embracing the idea of being a superhero show.
But here's the thing also that I liked about the CW shows, in that, going back to what we were talking about, the soap opera elements, they incorporated soap opera elements and the teen drama elements into their superhero shows, and it worked.
It does, yeah.
It worked. You know, people actually say, oh, okay, I mean, you know, because...
You know, I'm always amazed when I see fans online bitching about that stuff, and I'm just like, well, I mean, the comics had that stuff too back in the day.
Oh, listen, I grew up watching soap operas like All My Children and Edge of Night and General Hospital and stuff like that. If you had put 50% of those characters in costumes, comic book fans would have ate it up.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and giving them superpowers, because basically that's what the CW is, soap opera with superpowers.
Yeah.
And really, that's all it is. And you'll have oh no, it's not. It's more than that. No, it's not. Really, it's soap operas with superpowers.
Exactly.
It's people navigating their personal relationships with their families and loved ones, while trying to save the world from the latest supervillain of the week. That's all you throw into the mix.
Exactly. Yeah. And
that's it.
Now, you got to give them a hat tip for just how much they were able to accomplish with this crossover, because it's been an annual thing. Every year they do a crossover episode, and it started out small, right? You had the Flash and Green Arrow crossover, and then they brought in the Legends in the year after that. And then when Supergirl came into the mix, they had the Alien Invasion. And then last year they made it even a larger thing with the Elseworlds. And then I remember last year when they had a teaser, next year, Crisis on Infinite Earths. And they've been teasing it ever since the first season of The Flash, because there was that newspaper article, The Flash missing, vanishes in Crisis.
The very first episode of The Flash, they had him find that newspaper. So they've been leading up to the Crisis ever since then. And I just want to say this and get this out the way before I forget. because I've been reading a lot of stuff on Facebook and, elsewhere. I don't even know why I bother with these idiots because, they say, well, the Crisis is not as good as Avengers Endgame because they didn't spend as much money on it and the special effects one is good. If that is what you think, and I'm not talking to you, Perry, I'm talking to those other people out there. If that's what you think, that the Crisis on Infinite Earth isn't as good as Avengers Endgame because they didn't spend as much money on it, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
Yeah.
This is Derek Ferguson calling you an idiot because yes, we started the year with Avengers Endgame. And to me, it's kind of fitting that we ended the year with Crisis on Infinite Earths because it's just as good.
It is. Well, I mean, I'm going to say that I think Endgame is better, but not because of the money, but just because of the story and just like how much has gone into it, how emotional it was. Now, that's not saying Crisis is bad. Crisis is really good. It's awesome. But, I mean...
No, Endgame was more emotional. Yeah, you're right. Endgame was more emotional, but Crisis spent, like 8 years that we've been watching all these various things? Yeah, so they took the same time over 8 years to build up to this that Disney Marvel took 10 years and 22 movies. So they did the same thing, and I think that they should be respected.
I think so too, definitely. And you know what? And talking about the budget and the special effects and all that, the CW, they didn't spend as much as a movie studio. I mean, they can't. Let's be honest here. They can't spend as much.
No.
So I mean, you work with what you have, but that doesn't mean it looks cheap or anything like that. I mean, look, if you told me 20 years ago that we'd have a superhero universe on live action TV, I would have said it can't be done because we had superhero TV shows in the 90s, we had them in the 70s and the 80s, and even if the stories were good, there was always this kind of like cheap factor to them. Like Lois and Clark, right? There was a cheapness to it. There was a cheesiness to it. Like he didn't even wear a real belt. The belt was made of cloth, right? So there was always this kind of like cheesy elements to it but they do a pretty damn good job with what they have. They stretch their budgets really well.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And you know what? They, like you said, they spent like 8 years building this up, and they didn't have the budget of, say, Justice League, but this thing blows Justice League out of the water.
And something else that they did that people don't appreciate, but I do. They didn't do what, other people do when they make like a new version of a superhero show or a new character or whatever, that we're supposed to pretend like, okay, well, the version that came before, that's invalid or doesn't exist. Crisis validated every single superhero show and movie that they've done.
Everything.
They had Burt Ward, for God's sake.
Yeah.
To establish that, the Batman TV show 1966, that existed.
They had
the
Birds of Prey TV show
movie.
the Birds of Prey TV show, which lasted like 9 episodes before it got canceled because it was so terrible.
Existed.
Yeah,
that existed.
And you know what? If Dean Cain hadn't gone nuts, I know they probably would have had a Lois and Clark scene in there too.
Yeah, but Dean Cain, well, we're not going to talk about him. It's sad what happened to that Superman.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen him on Fox. It's sad what happened to that. It's sad what happened to him.
They had brought in Kevin Conroy playing Batman in live action for the first time.
For God's sake. Playing the Dark Knight from Kingdom Come.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because they weave so many things together in this. Oh, and speaking of Justice League, there was that surprise cameo nobody was expecting, right? They brought in Ezra Miller as the Flash.
Oh my God, yeah.
And
so in other words, they validated the Justice League movie. They said, okay. To me, that was remarkable what they did because they said to all of the fans, you know what? no matter what you love, it exists. We'll let you know it exists. There's only two things that, well, they didn't have the Linda Carter Wonder Woman.
Yeah, that was an obvious omission.
Which makes me think, and I have no way of knowing, folks. I have no inside information, but I'm just wondering if there's some bad blood between Linda Carter and Warner Brothers, because every time she has opportunity to appear as Wonder Woman, she was supposed to be in the first movie, but she didn't do it because of quote unquote scheduling.
Okay.
And every time that they give her opportunity to appear as Wonder Woman, she always says she can't do it because of scheduling.
Well, because she appeared in Supergirl, I think it was season 2. She was the president. Right. So I wonder if maybe it's not something with Warner Brothers, or if it's just something about playing Wonder Woman again.
Yeah. There's some, because you know what? Because they even use archival footage from old, shows that they had. Like they use footage from the original Flash TV series. Yeah. And I'm saying, well, how come they couldn't use archival footage from, the Wonder Woman?
You know what the nice thing about that use of the Flash footage is, it kind of closes this circle when back in the, well, also not only with the 90s TV show, but also with the new TV show, because if you remember in season 1, right, when because I can't remember who she, I don't know who she, I've only seen like 2 episodes of the 90s show, and I was like in elementary school when I did, so I don't really remember. But the actress who was his love interest in the TV show, she appeared in the first season of The Flash as a scientist, like Dr. McGee, I think was her name, or something like that.
I don't know her name, but I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
And then at the end of the season, when Henry gets out of prison, played by John Wesley Shipp. There's this scene where him and Dr. McGee are sitting there talking, and they're kind of flirting with each other. And, Barry and Joe are kind of commenting how, like, well, it looks like your dad's met a new friend, right? And then nothing ever comes of that. But then in this, it kind of circles back, because you've got that scene from the archival footage with those 2 actors again.
Yeah. Yeah, and okay, you have the coolness factor, of course, of John Wesley Shipp. He's playing, and they have that scene where he's on the treadmill, and he's obviously playing the Flash from that earlier TV series.
Yeah.
And then we have to do it because I want to get all my gushing out. All right, Brandon Routh playing Superman again.
Oh my God. Like, folks, ever since we saw that first image,
right now, you can't see it, but I'm standing up. I'm applauding.
I don't know where to begin. I mean, it was just, everything about that sequence was so perfect.
Being a comic book fan, and I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again, which is why I don't go with a lot of people bitching and moaning and whining and complaining about superhero movies and TV shows now, because for me, this is what I've wanted to see ever since I was 12 years old. To see Brandon Routh get to put the suit back on again. Mm-hmm. And like you said, he did not hit a wrong note anywhere.
Yeah.
And man,
I didn't know what to expect going in, because they had said he's playing Kingdom Come Superman, and they showed him in the costume, right? He's got the gray in his hair, but he's not really just Kingdom Come Superman.
No, he's not.
I mean, they reference so many different things in there, right? He talks about how the Tyler Hoechlin Superman, they've got him and his Lois, they've got a kid, Jonathan. And when Brandon Routh looks at him for the first time, Brandon Routh Superman, he says, he reminds me a lot of my son Jason, who was the name of his son from Superman Returns.
Yeah.
And then they also like when after the fight between him and Tyler Hoechlin at the Daily Planet, he says, believe it or not, it's not the first time I've gone crazy and fought myself. Right? That was Superman 3, which is funny because Superman Returns was supposed to retcon Superman 3.
Well, we talked about this in another episode where we had the thing where when Supergirl, when she meets Ray Palmer for the first time, she says, "You look a lot like my cousin."
Well, yeah, it was Ray Palmer who said that about her. He's like, "Wow, she reminds me a lot of my cousin."
Yeah, right. So when we finally see him as Superman, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of things that he references, all different ages of Superman and whatnot. But
remember the how everybody, all his friends died, right? Perry White, Jimmy Olsen, Lois Lane, right? He says, he said it was the guy from Gotham, meaning the Joker, and they have the newspaper article framed. That was from the Injustice video game.
From the Injustice video game, right? Yeah. So it's a lot of different incarnations of Superman that he's embodying in this, and I can't help but think that they said, you know what? We're going to give this guy his due, which he should have had, and let him, like, in a way, be all Superman.
Yeah. And you know what? I am so excited about the Superman and Lois TV show with Tyler Hoechlin. I think he does a great job. I can't remember the name of the actress who plays Lois. Do you know what her name is?
No, I don't, because actually, since I haven't been keeping up with the CW show, that's the first time I actually saw her.
Oh, okay. So you didn't watch the Elseworlds crossover last year then?
No, I haven't seen the. But okay, but that's something else that I wanted to reference too. That even though, because I know people have been asking me, they said, well, I haven't been watching Flash, I haven't been watching Arrow. I said, it doesn't matter. You can watch this. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen. I watched The Flash leading up to it, and I've watched most of Arrow leading up to it. Elizabeth Tulloch, that's her name.
But the thing about Crisis is that it's very accessible, even if you haven't been keeping up with like Arrow or Flash or even Black Lightning.
Right, because they finally bring him in. They finally bring him in.
They bring him in, even if you haven't been keeping up with that. You know what? This is very accessible.
Yeah.
They let you know, okay, this is who this is. This is what Earth they're on. Mm-hmm. And this is what they do, because they have a very nice scene between Black Lightning and the Flash, where they introduce each other and they tell each other their real names.
There are two great scenes there. Like, there's the one where they first meet, right? And Barry's trying to talk him down and everything. But then, when they're on the Wave Rider together, I mean, that was such a great scene. Like, both of those guys, Cress Williams and Grant Gustin, man, they're bringing their all in that scene.
Oh yeah, and it's and you kind of get the sense that the same kind of bonding that the Flash had with Green Arrow, he's going to have with Black Lightning. Yeah, that's kind of the feeling that I kind of got, because I kind of got that same vibe in that scene.
Speaking of, I'm not sure if you saw this, but I saw this on Facebook yesterday. They had there's a picture of Grant Gustin, posing at Oliver Queen's grave with like a thumbs up, and the caption read, when your best friend dies, but you still remember when he shot you in the back with 2 arrows.
But see, you know what? That's another thing that I like about this whole Arrowverse, because that you get the feeling that these people really did like each other in real life, and it couldn't help but translate into their performances.
Oh, absolutely.
Because because I mean, the performances and all this was good. I mean, and getting back to Brandon Routh, I mean, I couldn't love him more. I was at home watching it, and when they gave him the flyby,
yes,
I stood up and cheered.
Oh my God! And they gave it.
The Christopher Reeve flyby. They said, "You can do it, bro."
Yeah. And he was in the Kingdom Come suit, but it had been changed. So now the black was gold instead. It was
which is why I can't help but think, because they did establish that there are some other Earths out there now. It's not a whole big multiverse, but there's some other Earth, and he's on his own Earth. And like you said, they had changed. It wasn't black; it was gold and which denoted. I can't help but think that they got plans for him.
I know, because they've got this Superman TV show coming out, so I think they're going to have something, with him interacting on occasion with Tyler Hoechlin's Superman and Elizabeth Tulloch's Lois Lane, which, by the way, I got to say, I loved how they interacted, right? Because there wasn't any sort of like jealousy or anything like that, right? None of that bullshit that you get in a lesser show, right? They're both, they acknowledge, we're the same guy.
Yeah, we're Superman, And,
there's nothing like Brandon Routh Superman being jealous because Tyler Hoechlin's Superman still has his Lois Lane or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. He recognizes that, hey, you're you and I'm me. This is what happened. And it's just, I don't know. because I'm one of those people that I always felt that Brandon Routh never got a fair break.
Agreed.
In Superman Return. He never got a fair break because you could see flashes of what he could have been in that movie if he had been allowed to play Superman the way he wanted. And they did give him the opportunity in this crossover. And I can't help but think that they just say, you know what? Do you?
Yeah.
Just do. You know what? You want to do Superman? You do Superman the way you want to do Superman.
One of the things I always wanted to see more of, based on the brief flashes we got of it in Superman Returns, was how he would play Clark Kent. Because the way he does it in Superman Returns, right, he doesn't play it at all the same way Reeve did, which, we talked about this when we talked about Superman the movie. There's a lot of good in Reeve's performance, but sometimes his Clark got a little bit too over the top.
Yeah.
But Routh,
a little bit too bumbly.
Right. Routh goes the opposite direction, right? He plays him as the ultimate wallflower, where it's like you don't even notice he's there, which I think is perfect for Clark Kent, because you're not going to remember that guy's. You might remember the guy's face if he's tripping over everything and dropping things every 5 seconds, but you're not going to remember his face if he's just like that guy who works at the planet that you kind of bump into every now and then.
Right, because Clark Kent is supposed to be the type of guy when he goes and he disappears and he's got to fly away. Like if he's in the Daily Planet and he's in the newsroom and they hear about there's a tsunami on the other side of the world and everybody's looking and they're watching the TV screen and everything like that. And then all of a sudden they see Superman. He's rescuing people from the tsunami. You'll always see Lois Lane turn around and say, well, where's Clark?
Yeah.
Because they don't even know he's gone.
Exactly, yeah.
They don't even know he's going. Because as you say, he's a wallflower. He's got us in the back room. You don't notice he's gone. Or he said, "Well, I got to go to the storeroom to get some pencils."
Yeah.
And Clark. Okay, fine, whatever. Goodbye. And they don't even notice, and they're looking on TV, and Superman is saving people, and they say, "Well, where's Clark?"
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe not even where's Clark. Just where's that guy with the glasses?
Yeah.
So, and I also loved how they work in the fact that it's Brandon Routh playing this Superman and also playing the Atom. Right? When they meet him, they're just like, he looks just like Ray Palmer.
And they did not shy away from it.
No.
They just said it right up front. They said, well, wow, you know what? You look like Ray Palmer.
Yeah. Right? And he comes back and they look at him like, wow, Ray, you're looking jacked. And it's like, that's not Ray Palmer.
Yeah. Which I think is the way to go with something like this. And I appreciate the fact that they did not. And I don't know. You know what? I understand that sometimes you will have like certain characters that are dark and don't lend themselves to humor. Mm-hmm. And I know that a lot of people, they say, well, they don't think superheroes should be funny or dark and everything like that. But I do appreciate the fact that in between all of this thing with all of the universes dying, that there was still some room for humor.
Yeah.
And the writers of this, and all of the actors and everybody that was involved in this thing appreciate the fact that, even though, which is a lot of what shows like, what am I thinking of? MASH. Mm-hmm. MASH is based around the whole thing that people are doing comedy and having fun while people are dying around them, but they're doing it as a way of coping with the fact that there are people dying around them.
Well, I mean, even beyond that, obviously it's human nature to, you talk to people who deal with death. They've got the darkest gallows humor you'll ever find.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's their way of dealing with it, which is why I appreciate it in Crisis that, they made time for humor in between. Yes, there are universes that's dying. There's billions of people that are being wiped out of existence. But, there is still time for you. They have a scene where all of the girls, they stop and they have a drink. Yeah. Simply because they got to take a break from this, and take a moment.
But not beyond the human part, that's also... the audience needs that too, because you can't.
Yeah, true.
I mean, if you keep adding the tension, you keep cranking the tension. Eventually, it's going to break, right? You got to have something to break that tension.
You cannot be relentlessly dark all the time, which is why it kind of worries me that people that need their entertainment to be so dark and miserable. What is it about you that you need for your entertainment to be so dark and miserable? Like, people will actually say, well, so-and-so, I love, whatever show it is, but it's not dark enough. What do you mean it's not dark enough? Everybody dies in almost every episode. Yeah. They just keep needing it to be darker and more miserable. And no, I mean, you need the light to balance out the darkness.
Right.
In other words. And that's what they had in Crisis. Yes, they had very dark moments.
Well, I mean, you talk about something like, The Dark Knight, which, it's been called a really dark movie. But there are moments of levity in that. There are moments when Alfred and Bruce are making jokes. Logan, right? Logan was a really dark movie, but they had moments of levity in it.
Well, of course, because you need that, because that's also human, because we tend to make jokes even when we're in the blackest of situations. You know what? I've been to funerals. That were hilarious.
Yeah.
You know what? People were cracking jokes and they were doing that simply as a way to deal with the darkness of the situation that we're here to celebrate somebody, died. But people were,
like 2 years ago, I had my father's funeral. I gave the eulogy there. I had everybody laughing. I had the whole crowd of people laughing their asses off.
Yeah. My grandfather, my mother's father, his funeral was one of the funniest things I've ever been. It was like a Richard Pryor concert where people were getting up and telling stories about him.
Yeah.
That's just human nature. Everything does not have to be so unrelenting, grim, and dark all the time. And if that's what you need in your entertainment, hey, well, fine, that's you. Mm-hmm. Me, I prefer to have a nice little balance. And that's what I got in Crisis. Yes, we did have our dark moments, but we had, like, at the end scene where we get the Hall of Justice.
Yes, finally.
And we get the Justice League.
Yeah, because they've been teasing that Hall of Justice ever since Invasion.
Yeah,
and they finally did it. Yeah,
but then the last scene we get is what we get. It's the cage with Gleek.
Yes,
is open, and we get the Super Friends theme playing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, which to me, I said, you know what? They couldn't have ended it on a more, that was the perfect note to end it on.
Yeah, and they did what Crisis did too, right? Because at the end of Crisis, they merged together the worlds and they created a new Earth. And that's what they did here. Yeah. So finally, all these Earths are now together. We don't have to worry about jumping back and forth. All of it's now together. Superman has always existed in the history of the Flash TV show. And speaking of, like, one of my favorite moments was when Black Lightning arrives on the Wave Rider and he meets everyone else. And he finds out that Superman is not only real, but there are two of them.
Yeah. He said, do you know Superman is real? Now, okay, there's one thing I wanted to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
You're always asking me. I'm glad I'm able to ask you something because two of your favorite characters showed up in Crisis, and I wanted to ask you what you thought about that. John Constantine and Lucifer.
Yes. Oh my God, that was one of my favorite moments. I mean, there was a rumor floating around on Twitter and everywhere that Tom Ellis was on the set of Crisis. So everybody was kind of wondering, are they really going to have Lucifer in there? Or is it just going to be like kind of like a wink and a nod cameo? But they went full out, brought him to Earth 666.
Yeah, Earth 666.
And then
most appropriate.
And it's just a short scene, right? They show up to Lucifer and they need to have a way to get into purgatory. But like in that short scene, Matt Smith and Tom Ellis, like the way they play off each other was so great. And well, what did you think of that? Because I know you've never seen Lucifer, right?
I've never seen Lucifer, but I did appreciate the fact they had John Constantine on here because this guy's been bouncing around from one network to another, playing John Constantine. And you know what?
In animated movies, too.
He never steps a foot wrong.
Yeah.
You know, this is the same guy. No matter what network he's on or what show he's on, it's the same guy.
Yeah.
You know, and I think the strength of him playing John Constantine is that he plays him like that. You know, that no matter where
what I kind of like too about that scene is how it's not stated directly, but it's kind of implied. Like there's one John Constantine in the multiverse.
Yeah. There's only one John Constantine, which is a notion that I like. Because there should be like certain characters. I think there should be only one version of them. And the thought that there's one John, and you get the feeling that, of course, he knows about the multiverse.
Oh yeah, because he has history with Lucifer, right? He says, you owe me for that thing with Maze, who's one of Lucifer's friends.
And so this is all like not really freaking him out because he knows about it already.
Yeah. But yeah, that scene was great. Like it was so awesome seeing the two of them together and just watching them riff off each other. Also, I love the little reference when at the end before they leave, Lucifer says, he calls him John Constantine instead of John Constantine because, the British pronunciation of it is Constantine. That's how the name is supposed to be pronounced. But whenever it's been adapted, they've gone with the American pronunciation of Constantine.
Oh, you know what? I was wondering why that was a thing that they threw in there. And I said, well, I'm sure somebody will explain to me. Okay, cool. Yeah. But see, that's one of the things I love about this. If you get it, fine. But if you don't, it doesn't spoil your overall enjoyment of what's going on.
Yeah. Now, there is a downside or a bit of a downer point about the Lucifer Constantine scene, and that's that it was so good, right? And afterwards, it started going around, like Warner Brothers was pitched on like a TV movie or something where Lucifer and John Constantine team up, right? Just like a TV special, a TV, something like that, right? Just a done in one thing. Yeah. Tom Ellis wants to do it. Matt Smith wants to do it. The fans want to see that. The fans will probably pay for that if you put it on a streaming service. And Warner Brothers is just like, no, we don't want money.
Really?
Why? Why wouldn't you do that? It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I mean, Warner Brothers has this way of just like, oh, here's a nice gun. I think I'll see what it's like to shoot myself in the foot with it.
That's a good point. I like it. Wow, that's damn. Yeah, I mean, like you said, that's like a no. If the actors want to do it and the fans want to see it, why would you leave money on the table like that?
Yeah, I mean, why haven't they brought back Constantine on DC Universe by now?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? Because I'm not as big a Constantine fan as you and some of my other friends. But so what I've seen on this guy on TV, I like him.
Yeah.
This guy, yeah.
And his show was great. It was, cut short. It was only ended up lasting like 9 episodes. But yeah, I mean, there's no reason they shouldn't have brought it in.
Yeah, which I don't understand why the CW just doesn't have a Constantine show to explore, like you said, the magical side of the DC universe.
But I don't know. we could spend like 100 years trying to figure out why WB does the stupid shit they do, and we would never come close to finding an answer.
And we should also mention that they do establish that the shows that they have on the streaming service, DC Universe, like Titans.
Yes, I was going to mention that.
Doom Patrol and Swamp Thing, they also exist in this. They acknowledge, this is all part of it too.
Oh, so speaking of, going back to Constantine just real quick, because you didn't see the show. So Jim Corrigan, right? That actor who played Jim Corrigan, the Spectre, he appeared in Constantine first and he died at the end of the episode, and there was a hint that he would become the Spectre later on. So they pick up on that. They pick up on that from the Constantine TV show.
Wow. Okay, cool. See, you know what? That's what I really liked about this whole Crisis thing. They brought back everybody. They said, listen, you want to be a part of this? We're not leaving anybody out. If you were at all any part of this whole DC universe, we're going to give you a small part, and we're going to acknowledge you, and we're going to let you have your moment to shine. Everybody did.
Robert Wolf from Batman playing Alexander Knox, right? He's in the opening, and he's looking up in the sky, and there's the bat signal.
And they had the music.
Yeah.
Da, 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 and he looks up at us. Oh my God, Alexander Knox, who we haven't seen in 40 years.
And I don't know, I don't know where it appeared in the show, but before Crisis aired, there was an image of a newspaper article with Michael Keaton's photo, and it said Bruce Wayne to marry Selena Kyle.
Well, I think that's supposed to be the newspaper that Alexander Knox is holding.
Oh, okay.
I think I don't know, but I think that I know what you're talking about. But I think that's the newspaper, because when we see him, he's sitting. Don't ask me why Alexander Knox is sitting on a bench in the middle of the night reading a newspaper. But,
well, I mean, it's the Tim Burton verse. It's always night.
Yeah,
it's actually like It's actually like noon there.
Yeah, but I think that's supposed to be the newspaper that he's holding that announces and it's got Michael Keaton's picture on there. Yeah. So, but I mean, to me, that's the one thing that I love, that they acknowledge. They said, okay, no matter what DC show you've seen, or even the cartoons, since we got Gleek and the Super Friends, no matter what you see, it exists somewhere out there. We're not saying that it don't exist and it's not valid.
And you know what? It's funny, because this was, back in the mid-'90s, I think it was. This was the idea that Grant Morrison and Mark Waid had for DC Comics to explain the multiverse, right? To explain the timelines. Their idea of hypertime was basically, it's all real. Everything from all the different adaptations, all of it exists in the same universe. And it's kind of nice to see their idea finally be acknowledged, because DC said, no, we're not going to do that back in the day.
And can I put forth my vote, hoping that from now on we will see, every time they have a crossover, that we will see Marv Wolfman appear?
Oh, that was such a great moment.
Oh, that was so much fun when he just runs in and he says, "Oh, could you sign my book?" He said, and they look at him and say, "Oh, He said, "Yeah, y'all been together forever." Oh, I'd laugh so hard when he said, "Oh, y'all guys been together forever."
One thing I was surprised, though, and I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure there was at some point in one of the shows a reference to the Psycho Pirate, but he doesn't appear at all in this at all. He didn't appear at all in Crisis. That was a little bit.
No, he did. Which is one thing that I always loved about the original, the comic book, in that the Psycho Pirate, out of all people he was the only one that remembered the multiverse.
And John Constantine.
But John Constantine is not going to tell. Right. And he's not going to be driven crazy by it. Right. And
that's the thing. But the Psycho Pirate was driven crazy by what he knew.
Yeah, exactly. He was, and he was the only one that knew that, whereas in this version, we got the Martian Manhunter. He goes around to everybody and he imbues the memory of what went on, so that all of the legends and the members of the Justice League, they remember the multiverse.
Yeah, which I thought was a neat little twist, because I wasn't sure if they were going to go the route of the Crisis, where people have some vague recollection that something happened, but they don't remember the multiverse before, which is how it is for everybody else. But so I was kind of surprised that they decided to give that knowledge to the main characters. Yeah.
I mean, if it was me, I would have went with like nobody remembers, except for, like you said, like John, like maybe people like John Constantine and John Jones, the Martian Manhunter. Maybe they remember it, but I would have just had everybody just assume it. But he gives his memory to everybody. So now we have all of the major superheroes. They know about the multiverse.
Yeah, and Lex Luthor is apparently ingratiated himself, right? He's apparently gotten redeemed, which I think is definitely going to be a big point in the Superman and Lois show.
Which is another thing I wanted to ask you about, because I don't know, everybody seems to love John Cryer as Lex Luthor. To me, it seems to me that he's just doing, Gene Hackman.
You know what?
Maybe it's just.
Well, when I saw him on Supergirl, I had the exact same reaction. I didn't really care much for him when he was on Supergirl. I kind of warmed to him a little bit more in this. I think he's stepped up his performance a bit, but yeah, I mean, he's still not. I don't know. I'm hoping it gets better, because he's already improved in my eyes, at least a little bit, from Supergirl to Crisis. So hopefully that continues, but we'll have to see.
And I think he's doing Gene Hackman because he actually did work with Gene Hackman, because he played Lex Luthor's nephew in one of the Superman movies.
Oh, okay. And he was also he's also apparently a big comic fan too. So
yeah, in I believe it was in Superman 4: The Quest for Peace.
Oh, right. Okay.
He played Lenny Luthor.
Yeah.
Was like, and he like took the place of like Otis, but now he was, the bumbling henchman. So when I saw him playing Lex Luthor and I was watching, I said, okay, well, he's doing Hackman.
Yeah.
Although I do think that you're right that in Crisis, he's kind of like stepped up his game and he's kind of like establishing his own Lex Luthor.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of.
Yeah.
And, another thing I wanted to ask you. Oh, I love this episode because I'm going to ask you stuff for a change instead of only because I know you were such a big fan of this show. I didn't follow it as much as you did. Mm-hmm. But how did you like the resolution of the Smallville version of Clark Kent Superman?
Well, see, I didn't really. I wasn't a Smallville fan. So, like, I loved it at first. Like, the first 4 seasons were great. But after that, it really started to go downhill. And then I just kind of, like, hate-watched it. Because it... And it became this thing because, they would jump the shark several times in a season. And sometimes they would do it multiple times in one episode. So I kept watching just for that.
Oh, okay.
And, I mean... that and Michael Rosenbaum. Michael Rosenbaum was actually the reason I stayed around for as long as I did. Because
that's what a lot of people. Yeah, well, that's what a lot of people tell me. They said that they stuck around, for him, Michael Rosenbaum.
Yeah, I mean his Lex Luthor, hands down, my favorite take on the character. I mean, when they were talking about bringing Lex Luthor into this universe, I so hoped they would try to get Rosenbaum back. And he was asked if he wanted to appear in Crisis, but it was apparently just a small cameo, and he turned it down because he said, like, what they were offering, what they wanted, he's like, I didn't feel it really did enough justice to the character.
Okay.
Which it's too bad. Would have been nice to see him back. But, so all that said, like, I didn't... Because, Tom Welling has, like, an allergy to wearing that suit. Like, even in the last scene when he finally opens his shirt and there's the suit underneath, like, apparently that was CG because he wouldn't wear the damn thing. But I think it was nice that they had this little resolution, and it's like, he gave up his power so he could be a dad. I mean, it was and the moments with him and Lex were also pretty cool, and also seeing Erica Durant's back as Lois Lane. So it was a nice scene. I really liked it, but it wasn't anything It was maybe a bit longer than I think it needed to be. But one thing I will say that I did like a lot is when Elizabeth Tulloch's Lois Lane, she sees Brandon Routh's Superman, all super buff. She sees Tom Welling's Clark Kent, all super buff. And then you've got Tyler Hoechlin, who's much more lean, right? She's always giving these second glances at them.
Like I said, hey,
did you pick up on that?
That's what you could have been,
And each time, Clark gives her this look, really? Come on.
I wasn't, I'm like you. I never was a big fan of Smallville. I think I watched it regularly for the first 2 seasons, and then after that, I just watched it on and off. Mm-hmm. But I think that as a resolution to that whole universe, that worked because since Tom Welling was playing a Superman, didn't want to be Superman anyway. Mm-hmm. The fact that he gave up his powers just to be a regular guy. Yeah. And just, I said, you know what? That works for me.
Yeah, same here.
And I also appreciate the fact, like they did, that they gave a closure to that particular series. That, they said, okay, well, you know what? We're just going to close this out.
And it's a closure that fits a lot better than the actual Smallville finale did.
That's what some other people have told me. They said they actually liked that better than the way that it actually ended.
Yeah.
Yeah, which again, this is a crossover since they're fixing a lot of things in the various series and universes that they fixed that. They said, okay, well, you know what? We're going to fix this and give a satisfying ending. I mean, I had no problem. I mean, I really had no problem with, Crisis, much like, and I always compare it, and people say, and we had talked about this early on in the episode. People say, oh, no, well, it was nothing like Endgame. I said, yes, it was. I said, this was a whole lot like Avengers Endgame in that it provided closure to a lot of things that had been building up in the Arrowverse for 8 years. Yeah. And then, of course, after that, we got the last Arrow episode, which is kind of like, the epilogue to this. Okay. I watched that. I said, yeah, this is kind of like the epilogue.
Okay, so I haven't seen that Arrow episode yet. So how do you think it works as an epilogue?
I think it works fine.
Okay.
I do. Why? Because see, me, I do not like. Okay, you have a lot of shows that have what they call a series finale. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's not really like a finale. It's like they just put the characters in a holding pattern in case they decide they want to bring the show back in a couple of years or have a movie. Right. Or whatever. But Arrow, they did provide a closure. And can I say that I think that, what? What's the name of the guy that plays Oliver Queen?
Stephen Amell.
Such a ham. This guy got 2 heroic death scenes. He didn't just get one. He got 2 heroic death scenes, And then in Arrow, he gets another. Well, he doesn't get a death scene, but he gets a scene. I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen it, but if you haven't seen it, well, you need to go watch it. But he gets a scene in the afterlife. Okay. Let me put it that way. Okay. Where and I think that it says, okay, this is the end to Oliver Queen's story, which is what I appreciate. If you're going to have a series finale, then have a finale. End it.
I did think that was kind of funny the way they did that. How they said, because they've been building up to the fact that Oliver Queen's going to die in this, right? And just like Tony Stark's going to die in Endgame, we know it, right? And then DC, I think what happened is Greg Berlanti watched Endgame and he's like, you know what? Fuck you. You killed your main hero one time. We're going to kill him twice. Yeah. They killed him twice. The guy got two great deaths. Most actors pray for one great death scene in their career. This cat got 2. Yeah. So, but in Arrow, in the last episode, they do firmly establish, listen, Oliver Queen is dead, which I don't think I'm spoiling anything about telling anybody because they told you. Yeah, Oliver Queen is dead. Yeah. He's not, which is another thing that I appreciate about superheroes being in movies
and in television now, because they give us something that comic books are simply not able to give us. They give us a complete end to a story. They show us a superhero when he, like an Arrow. We saw Oliver Queen when he becomes Arrow. And, he starts off, as you said earlier, they didn't even call him the Green Arrow. I think it wasn't until like the 5th or 6th season.
Well, it was like, I think in like season 2 or season 3 is when they started calling him Arrow. And then, it wasn't until like season 5 when finally he became Green Arrow. Right,
Green Arrow. But we saw in that whole run of Arrow, we saw the whole career of a superhero from beginning to end.
Yeah.
And it ends, okay, now we go into somebody else because he passes on the Green Arrow mantle to his daughter.
Right. And that's going to be a backdoor spinoff because it was a backdoor spinoff for I don't know if it's actually been ordered to series or not, but they're trying to get a spinoff with her. It was like called Green Arrow and the Canaries.
Okay. Like most comic book fans, I always fantasize about what I would do if I had my own comic book company. If I had my own comic book company, one of my mandates would be that every 10 years, the character has to pass on the identity to somebody else. He quits or he dies and it goes to somebody else. Because that's just, you don't go on for 50 years.
Right.
But and I understand because of licensing and copyrights and trademark stuff like that. That's why Bruce Wayne is always going to be Batman,
right?
Even though he may give it up for a while, but because they have to do that because they have to preserve the trademark. I understand that. I got no problem with that,
right?
But I do appreciate the fact that movies are different and TVs are different. They said, well, you know something, we can do the story of Oliver Queen in 8 seasons and end it and have somebody else be Green Arrow.
Well, because they kind of have to because that's just the expectations of the audience, right? You get a complete series, and so right, exactly. And plus the actors got to move on eventually too. So it's good that we've got this venue where we can have that bookend and they can close it off and leave it there, and then maybe in 10 years we'll get another Green Arrow, but it won't be a continuation of the Stephen Amell version.
Right, exactly. And if you want to go see that version, you can always go back and watch the show over again.
Right.
And it's there for other generations to go back and say, okay, well, this is the third version of Green Arrow we have on, Netflix or whatever like that. They can go back and they can see, the Stephen Amell version. But the thing to me is that, it's a finite story. It doesn't just keep going on and on and on. Like, I mean, really, how many stories now? Okay, we've had Bruce Wayne as Batman for what, like 60 years now?
70.
There's literally
75,
nothing
I think.
There's literally nothing you can do now with Batman's Bruce Wayne we have not seen before.
Yeah.
Seriously, you can't.
There's nothing. He's lost his fortune. He's gotten married. He's gotten divorced. He's died like 5 times at least.
Now, there is one thing that you can do with Batman and Bruce Wayne. It hasn't been done before, but I'm not going to say it in public because I'm saving it for my own original character that I'm going to do. But there is one thing nobody's ever done with him before. There is.
Okay, but I gotta get that story once we wrap up the episode. Then.
Yeah.
But speaking of Batman, right? Let's talk about Kevin Conroy.
Oh.
Now, I don't know about you, but because I saw this twice, first in the individual episodes, then I watched it all in one chunk when it was completed. But watching Kevin Conroy as playing Bruce Wayne, Batman, it felt so surreal to me because I do not picture that face with that voice.
You've heard that voice, and you have a picture you associate with that voice.
Yes.
And seeing him... Yeah, you don't associate the picture in your mind. You say, wait a minute. And it's kind of like this thing that you got to get. And you say, wait a minute. Because you've heard this voice for 30 years? 30 years now, since the 1980s?
1990s,
We've heard Kevin Conroy's played Batman longer than anybody.
Yeah.
Period. And when you hear Batman, okay, like if I was to pick up a Batman comic book right now after we finish and read it, you know what I'm hearing? I'm hearing Kevin Conroy.
Every time. Not even consciously trying to.
Every time I hear Kevin Conroy. So when you finally see him playing Batman, you say, huh? Wait, yeah. So I understand what you're saying. It's like your brain is struggling.
Yeah, the second watch through, I actually had to look down every time he was on screen and just listen.
Yeah, you're struggling. Because you're just saying, okay, well, the voice is right, but the actual physical, yeah, I know what you mean.
And you know what's interesting is, because just like they did with Brandon Routh's Superman, and they mixed together like Superman the movie and Superman Returns with Injustice, they also did the same thing with Conroy's Batman. Right? I mean, like, he's wearing the exoskeleton from Kingdom Come. But there's also a bit of Dark Knight Returns in there. There's a bit of Batman versus Superman in there. Like, some of his dialogue is taken directly from BVS.
Yeah.
Like, when he talks about how he talks about what Superman's parents did, he's like, my parents taught me a different lesson. That's straight out of Batman v Superman.
Well, he had the glasses in there. The broken pair of glasses, Clark Kent's glasses.
Yeah.
Because a Batwoman, she sees them and she said, holy shit, He kept them apparently he killed Superman and he kept them as a trophy, you know. So this is like a really dark version of, Batman. And while I do appreciate that, they gave Kevin Conroy a chance to play him in live action. Like you said, the dichotomy, like we said, well, wow, and who was the guy? Was that supposed to be Was that supposed to be what's his name? The black guy that was hanging out with him?
Yeah, that's Luke Fox.
Oh, okay. All
Lucius's son, who in the comics he becomes Batwing.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure. I was thinking maybe that was supposed to be like a black version of the kid who's in Batman Beyond.
Oh, Terry McGinnis.
Terry McGinnis. Yeah, I thought maybe that was supposed to be Terry McGinnis. Yeah.
No, he's because Luke Fox is a supporting character in Batwoman.
Right. Oh, okay.
So that's why they put him in there, because that's why they had that little conversation when she says, "Oh, he's kind of." Supergirl goes, "He's kind of cute," and Batgirl says, and Batwoman says, "No, that's weird."
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right.
So yeah, that was just a reference to the Batwoman TV show. Now, which also, that's something else that I kind of like. I kind of like how they've transferred like the whole world's finest type of thing from Superman and Batman to Supergirl and Batwoman. Yeah, I do too.
They're kind of like the world's finest team now.
Yeah, and because I was suspecting that they were going to merge the Earths together when last year when they did Elseworlds, and they established this rapport between Supergirl and Batwoman, but it seemed weird because you knew where they were going down that world's finest route, but it seemed weird that they were doing it at the same time because they still had Supergirl on her own Earth, but Batwoman was from the same Earth as Arrow and the Flash. So that was when I first suspected that when they do Crisis, they're going to bring them all into one Earth, so that then they actually can have the Supergirl Batwoman crossover stuff, and it will make much more sense.
And you know what? I kind of like the whole thing where Supergirl was like kind of overjoyed that now they're on the same Earth.
Yeah. I mean,
she had that little bit. Like she was like, "Yay!" We all her and Batwoman on the same Earth now.
I mean, Melissa Benoist, she's so infectiously cheerful.
Oh man, she's good. She is adorable.
Oh, I just remember what I wanted to mention before is that I saw Jay and Silent Bob reboot, and she has a cameo in that. In the rebooted Batman v Superman-esque Bluntman v Chronic, Melissa Benoist plays Jay's character.
Really?
Yeah, she plays the new Chronic. So they've turned Chronic into a woman. And they brought Val Kilmer to play Blunt Man.
Oh Lord, that cat.
But it was a fun movie. Like it's basically Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back all over again, and it's just like tons of in-jokes from his podcast and everything. So if you're not a fan, you'll probably hate it. But if you are a fan, it was just like 2 hours of nothing but pure fan service.
Oh, well, that's okay. I mean, listen, I love Kevin Smith.
Yeah.
I do. I love Kevin Smith. I know a lot of people, they have the issues with them and, maybe valid or whatever like that. But, to me, the guy's just chill.
Yeah.
He's just, he's a fanboy.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And he's like the biggest fan. Like he's legit. Like he almost never bitches about stuff.
Nah. Yeah. And you know what? I like that. I don't like people that bitch and complain and moan and whine. Like I even watched the thing because, they had the thing, he hosted like the little after show.
Yeah.
When they had the crisis. Yeah, and, his love and joy of all of this stuff is so infectious.
Yeah. And
I know people, they complain and whine about him and everything. And to me, my whole thing is, okay, fine. Yeah, but what have you done?
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? And he's not only that, but he's not full of himself at all. Like if there's the only thing like he ever talks bad about is his own work.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. If he criticizes anything, he criticizes what he's done.
Yeah. And he always does it in a way. He's always making fun of himself. So, like,
Dogma?
Yeah.
Dogma is one of the best movies,
Oh, Dogma's amazing. I just rewatched that again recently. Oh, and they do have Matt Damon comes back for a scene as Loki from Dogma.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And they connect they connect Dogma to the Bourne series.
See, now I gotta see this movie. I have to see this now.
And he also says, he makes a reference because he's like, I'm Loki. You might remember me. And he's like, I know your kids right now are probably saying, that's not Tom Hiddleston. He's like, no, I'm the real Loki without the fake British accent.
I'm the real. Oh, man.
They also do have a reference to the Marvel movies because they're talking about, because they bring back Jason Lee as Brody from Mallrats. Right?
Really?
Yeah. And so there's this scene when they're in the shop with Brody, and Brody's explaining to them about remakes, and he's like, what they do is they take something you loved as a kid, and now they give it just a little bit of a twist so that they make you buy the same shit all over again. They're just going to keep on doing it. And then Jay makes comments like, yeah, like how many more Marvel movies do we need? And Jason Lee's like, hey, man, shut the fuck up. Those Marvel movies are like my religion.
Oh my god,
it's great. It's so much. It's such a fun movie.
Oh man, I love. Yeah. I'll tell you, I love Kevin Smith. The movie that he made where he talks about where he goes through the whole thing where he talks about how he was involved in the writing of screenplay for a Superman movie.
Lives, yeah.
And he has the meeting with John Peters, and they're talking about that is Richard Pryor level humor.
That is genius. I saw him do that live actually, because he told
really?
That, yeah, like he had because he had retold that story so many different times. Like I wasn't at the one where they filmed it, but I saw him at Wizard World in Chicago, like 15 years ago or something like that, and he told the story there, and like that was the first time I had heard it, was seeing him do it live. It was amazing.
Yeah, because you know what, that shit. It's so you can't make that shit like that up.
Yeah,
it's so bizarre. Yeah, it's a level of such surrealistic bizarreness that he's not making it up.
And it's funny when they did the documentary, The Making of Superman Lives, and John Peters responds to that, and he's like, "That never happened. That never happened." And you're watching that, and you're looking at John Peters, and you're like, "That guy's full of shit."
Yeah, right. Yeah, man. Yeah, you're full of shit. Yeah, that shit happened.
Yeah.
Because everybody that has talked to John Peters, they said the same thing. They said the cat always wanted, for some reason, he wants a giant spider in the movie.
Yeah. I love that book.
Because in the Wild Wild West, he finally got it.
Yeah. The door's open. He's like, motherfucker finally got his giant spider.
Yeah. It's like, and everybody says that. They said, but some reason he's obsessed with having a giant spider.
Yeah, I love that part in Kevin Smith's story when he's like, John. He's like, yeah. So John loved you. He likes the script. We want to bring you on. Did he mention the spider?
Yeah, did he mention the spider? Yeah, it's like everybody said, but did he mention the spider?
Yeah, he's like, what? Yeah, he did. He told you guys that too. He's like, every day with the fucking spider.
Oh man, hilarious. Okay, So,
all right. So, but yeah, and I just completely lost my train of thought about this movie.
I know. We got to bring this back to our final thoughts. Okay,
Yeah.
so what are your final thoughts as a whole of Crisis on Infinite Earths?
Overall, just very happy, very impressed. It was like, the CW shows, they have their ups and downs, but you know what? I love them. They're so much fun. And this, Flash has been my favorite ever since it came out. And it's just so embraces like the superhero side of it and like all the craziness that comes along with it, the multiverses, all that stuff. It's not shy about embracing all of it, and I love it about that. And that's continued on through these other shows to the point where now you've got Legends, which just does not give a shit at all. They're just going to throw...
Which is just batshit insane.
Yeah.
That's the show they just say, you know what, we're just going to do all the batshit insane stuff.
I mean, you want to see... Heatwave writing erotic romances, we're giving you that. You want to see a giant stuffed animal fighting a demon, we're giving you that. It's just like they don't care.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love it. Like it's nowhere. It's not on the same technical level as Endgame. It's not on the same emotional level, but it totally works for these shows and it also opens the door to more stuff because with more so than I think that's one thing where it succeeds where Endgame. Well, Endgame, I don't want to say Endgame failed at this, just they didn't have a reason to even try. But, Endgame, if you stopped the Marvel Cinematic Universe right after Endgame and put it on the shelf, it would be fine.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
But
yeah. If they never decide to make another movie after Avengers Endgame, that I would be happy.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing in there that's left open that you're not sure what's going to happen next. I mean, yeah, there's the thing with Thor joining the Guardians, but that's about it. But other than that, it's completely, it closes out the Marvel Cinematic Universe perfectly. Like, they're not going to close it out, and, thank God for that, but it does serve as that. Now, Crisis...
But let's say that you, as a moviegoer, you say, well, you know something? I don't want to go see any more Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. You don't have to.
Right. It's a perfect closure point.
Right. You have that perfect closure point, and you can just have those movies, and which I guess they're boxing it now. They're calling it the Infinity Saga.
Yeah.
You can just have that, and that's it. You don't have to watch another Marvel movie for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And you would not feel like you're missing out on anything.
Yeah, you would not feel like you're missing out on anything.
Now,
no, you would.
Crisis does... They do something different. They close out Arrow and all that, and this whole thing with the multiverse. But then they, right before the end, they throw the doors wide open to something new. And I really like that. That now we're gonna have, Superman and the Flash and Black Lightning and Batwoman all in the same universe together. I think I'm really excited to see where it goes from here. Like, I cannot wait for this season of shows to come to Netflix so that I can just binge them all in one weekend. Because I'm gonna do it. I know I am.
Well, you know what? Actually, that's what I was doing. I was waiting until after the season was over, and then I was watching it on Netflix, but I've gotten behind. But after seeing Crisis, this has encouraged me to go back and catch up on what I've been missing. Mm-hmm. So there is that, too, that I think that, and I don't think I'm the only one, that a lot of people, if they've been slacking off on watching the various CW shows, Crisis made me want to go back and catch up on what I, said, well, I don't need to watch this season of The Flash. I don't need to watch this. But now I want to go back and I want to, catch up on the seasons that I'm missing. Yeah. Simply by seeing this, because it was so good. And I mean, the execution, the acting, like you said, it didn't have a $200 million budget. But again, this is something that I want to impress upon our listeners, that, you have the comic books. I grew up reading the comic books and everything, but the comic books have gotten away from what I was reading them for. I was reading them for the stories and the characters. It's not about events and the continuity has to fit, here and there, and they got to explain every little thing, and we have to retcon this and we have to retcon. The movies and the TV series don't do that. They just tell good stories about interesting characters.
Yeah.
Bingo. Bottom line. That's what people respond to. Really, people don't give two figs about the continuity. You know who cares about that? The nut job fanboys.
Right.
That, oh yeah, well, you got a man. Oh, well, what about the continuity? And what about nobody cares about that.
Well, I remember Grant Morrison one time in an interview, he was talking about how, the difference between the way kids perceive the world and the way adults, or the way they perceive fiction. And he's like, a kid doesn't wonder how Superman flies. A kid doesn't wonder, how Batman has this big cave under filled with all these gadgets.
Nobody cares who fills the air on. Nobody cares who fills the air in the Batmobile's tires.
That's exactly what I was getting to. That's exactly what he said. That's the exact example. He said he's like nobody does. He's like, that's who does it. Nobody. Kids understand that. They don't care. It just happens.
Yeah. Why does Superman fly? Because he can.
Yeah.
It's just that simple, folks. Well, it's the gravitons and it's the lesser No, Superman flies because Superman can fly.
Well, I remember when John Byrne rebooted Superman, like he was there, he did all this talk about how, Superman's invulnerability is there's this invisible force field that's just like hovering right above his skin, and it's just like,
yeah.
Who gives a shit?
No, nobody cares. No.
And they said, like, yeah, and that force field, that's why his suit is always protected whenever he gets blown up, but his cape never does. And that's how he can lift things up, because the force field, like, extends, and that's his superhero. Like, who gives a shit?
And that was only an excuse for John Byrne in every issue to draw Superman with a torn cape.
Exactly, yeah.
Because he had to point out that, well, the force field does not extend to Superman's cape. Get the hell out! Nobody cares.
Yeah.
And really, we got away from that in the comic books, but the movies and the TV shows, they realize that people basically really don't care about that, and the only ones who care about that is the comic book fans, who insist that, well, you should care about it. Well, yeah. No, I care about the characters and I care about the stories. Mm.
But that's one of the problems with that because the comic industry, it's kind of in like this self-perpetuating cycle where they want to reach new readers, but they're still beholden to the fanboys and the direct market. And as long as they're beholden to the fanboys and the direct market, they can't appeal to the new readers. They can't do what the TV shows and the movies are doing. So it's this back and forth that keeps going on, and they can't really break out of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you.
And and I say that as someone who still reads the comics and still likes a lot of them. So I'm not putting down the comics themselves. I think there's a lot of good stuff going on, but there's still still weaknesses there in the industry.
As an art form, and mind you, when I talk about the comic book industry, I'm talking about the big two, which is Marvel and DC, which is what most people think of when we talk about, the comic books. They don't realize there's a whole universe of other comic book characters and companies out there that are producing comic books. But we tend to focus on Marvel and DC because they're the big two. And, they produce the characters that most people are familiar with. Even people that don't know anything about, the comic books, if you present them, I think that they said that Superman is like one of the three most recognizable fictional characters in the world.
Oh, absolutely.
Everybody knows Superman. Everybody knows Batman.
Yeah.
Everybody knows Wonder Woman. Even if you've never... My wife has never read a single Batman comic book, but she knows Batman.
Oh, yeah. My grandma knows Superman, right?
Yeah, everybody knows Superman because they're so recognizable. They're so iconic. Mm-hmm. But, again, it's not because of the minutia about how their powers work.
Right.
We recognize Superman because of what he represents.
Right.
He represents the best in humanity. He's an example. That's what we recognize about. It's not about, well, he's got a force field that we don't recognize him. Well, how does Superman fly? Most people, 90% of the world, 99% of the world who knows Superman doesn't recognize him because of that. They recognize him because of why? He stands for what? Truth, justice, and the American way.
Yeah.
Bottom line. That's
Absolutely.
why we know Superman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, these shows, they bring that back. They bring back that like kind of sense of wonder you had when you first started reading those comics.
Yeah.
And again, like I still read Marvel, I still read DC, I still love them, but I don't get that same sense of wonder that I get when I watch the movies or the TV shows.
Because when you're watching the Crisis and everything, what is everybody? Nobody talks about how good an archer Oliver Queen is. They talk about what a good man he is and what he represents, and how he inspired them to be heroes.
Yeah,
that's what. Yeah, exactly. That's what superheroes do. They inspire people, which is why I always get into an argument about people when they talk about, well, I can't relate to Superman because he's so powerful. I said, well, you're not supposed to relate to him.
Right.
I said, what are you talking about? No, you relate to Clark Kent. Superman is an inspiration. Superman is an ideal of what you can be.
Well, you know, superheroes basically, and this is what people got to realize, is that they're beyond other stories. And I'm not saying that as in like they're a different type of story than a regular story. And that's because what we're dealing with here is basically mythology.
Yeah.
That's what superheroes are. There are modern Greek myths. And, you know, it's like back in the day, people weren't asking why Zeus, why turning into a goose or whatever, or swan or whatever, would make a woman want to have sex with Zeus. They just accepted it. And people just gotta accept that. You know, this is just our mythology. And yeah, there are some things that don't have to be explained. You just gotta roll with it.
Well, see, back then people didn't have the internet. For other people to complain and talk about, well, we need to explain.
Yeah.
Why? No, myths are there for a reason, and superheroes are, like you say quite accurately, superheroes are our modern mythology. We don't have the pantheon of, you know, the gods of Olympus or Asgard, you know, to tell stories about. So we tell stories about these characters who exemplify what we want to be. We all want to think that we're the people that when adversity strikes, we're going to rise up and have a power that's greater in ourselves to meet that challenge. And that's why we love these characters.
Right.
Why do we love Batman? Batman goes out and beats up bad guys because something bad happened to him when he was a child. We all had things happen to us when we was a child that we want to get back at people for, which is basically what Batman is. He's a child getting back at the bad people that hurt him.
Yeah.
You know, Superman is the ultimate immigrant story.
Right.
He's an immigrant that comes to America and he becomes our savior. I mean, you got stuff from the Ten Commandments and Jesus Christ and everything, but basically that's what Superman is. He's an immigrant. You know, you have Wonder Woman, who's the ultimate female empowerment story.
Right.
Icon. You know, this Wonder Woman. She's just as strong and powerful as any man, more powerful than any other man, but also which I don't understand how she beats up people but promotes peace. But hey, we're not here to argue.
But that's how it works, right? You're not supposed to ask questions about it. It's just like how the X-Men are fighting for acceptance by living in a mansion by themselves and never talking to anyone.
Yeah. I mean, you know, some things you just go with. But again, the symbols of what they represent are more powerful than actually what they are in a way.
Right.
You know, it's what they represent. And yeah, if you go too deep into it and if you pick it apart, you can pick apart anything.
Yeah.
If you dig enough deep in it. But then again, why should you? Why can't you just accept what this is and just say, okay, this is what this represents, and I'm either going to take joy in what it represents, or I'm going to pick it apart until there's nothing left. Mm-hmm. Which is what most cynical people do nowadays.
Right.
You see them on the internet all the time. They pick apart everything until there's nothing left.
Exactly.
And that's why they have nothing left in their life. That's why they're bitter, cynical people.
Right. I mean, and you know what? That's what's annoying me when there's talk about like the Joker and getting the Oscar nomination, and you know, so many people are getting bent out of shape about this movie and about like superhero movies in general. Just like there's a really famous cartoon where, you know, one guy is really famous comic, web comic, where one guy is bashing something, the other guy just grabs his lips and says, "Shh, just let people enjoy things."
Yeah, just basically that's what it comes down to. Just let people enjoy things.
Yeah.
You know, let people enjoy what they enjoy. You don't have to challenge people all the time. Oh, you like that? You know, there are plenty of stuff that people like that I don't get. But hey, you know what? If you enjoy, which is why I always tell people that, you know what? I want everybody to see their favorite superhero on screen. Because I got to see my favorite superheroes on screen. I got to see Thor on screen. I got to see Black Panther. So I want, even if I don't like your superhero, I want you to see them on screen.
Yeah.
Simply because it's your favorite. Everybody deserves that.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember a conversation I had with someone. They were saying, when they were complaining about that Matt Reeves is going to do a Batman movie, right? And they're saying, why do we have to have another Batman movie? I'm like, why not?
Why not?
I mean, I like Batman. A lot of people like Batman. What's the problem with giving him another movie? And yeah, I'm with you. You know what? It's not an either or proposition. Like, it doesn't mean just because we have a lot of superhero movies doesn't mean we can't get other movies. Just because we have a lot of Batman movies doesn't mean we can't get a Batwoman TV show. I mean, we just did. Look.
Yeah, and also for somebody out there, Batwoman is their favorite character.
Yeah, and I'm glad they got it. And I'm glad they got that show.
For them, I'm glad they got a back. Supergirl, I never really was crazy about Supergirl until this TV show. Mm-hmm. You know.
Well, I was never really a Green Arrow fan to begin with. Like, the show was what got me into the character.
Neither was I. I like Green Arrow, but I can't say I was a Green Arrow fan. Mm-hmm. But this show made me look at Green Arrow in a new light.
No. Iron Man. Iron Man's a perfect example. Like, I've read the Avengers books since I was in like high school. So when Kurt Busiek and George Perez took it over, and that was my entry point. So I loved the Avengers. I liked Iron Man as an Avenger, but I could never really get into his solo books. But these movies, Iron Man's one of my favorite characters in the movies now. Guardians of the Galaxy too. Same thing.
Bingo. Yeah.
So yeah, just let people enjoy things. But I think we kind of ranted a little bit too much on this anyway.
Well, time for us to wrap it up anyway. Yeah. I think we've been going on long enough about it. So the bottom line is, folks, we love Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Absolutely.
And if you have not seen it, and but you can always go on the CW, the app.
Yeah.
They have it on the app. They have like the whole thing. You can watch it like it's one long movie.
Oh, okay, cool.
On the app, yeah. You can watch the whole thing.
And they also have, I think they also have the Kevin Smith after shows too with that.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. Because I watched it today on via my Xbox. I watched it on the CW app, which also I want to watch after we get finished. I see they have a Deathstroke animated series.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Do you know who does the voice of him in that?
I have no idea. So what they call the CW Seed?
Yeah. I wonder if they got Amanda Bennett back.
I have no idea, but I just saw it while they had a little commercial for it while I was watching, the Crisis today. And I said, oh, shoot. I said, I got to watch that. I said, I had no idea. But apparently they got a lot of stuff that's on the CWC that, I had no idea was on there.
Yeah, they've also got like, because they introduced the Freedom Fighters in Crisis on Earth X.
Yeah.
And yeah, they got their own animated show. They also had at one point they had a Vixen series as well.
You're right.
With the actress who played her on the TV show, she voices him. And they also had a John Constantine thing as well.
Yeah, but I'd seen that on YouTube. I did not know about the CWC until I actually, like I said, I downloaded because for Christmas my wife surprised me. She got me an Xbox One. So there's been a lot of things that a lot of apps I've been downloading and I've been watching simply because the ease of access now. I watch it with no problem. So I did not know about the CWC. So like I said, I saw the commercial today for this Deathstroke animated series. So I'm gonna watch that after you and I get through.
Okay.
And see what that's like.
So I just looked it up, and it turns out Michael Chiklis did the voice of Deathstroke for that.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I like him.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
One of the few good things about the two Fantastic Four movies.
Yeah, as we said, and sooner or later we'll get around to that. But just let me say briefly that him and Chris Evans, they were the best things about those Fantastic Four movies, because to me, it was obvious they read the comic books.
Yeah. Okay, so next episode, like last time you had a pretty good idea where since it's February and Black History Month, we should do a few episodes focusing on Black superheroes. And it's your pick now, so which one do you want to go with first?
Okay, now I know that everybody is going to be saying, because we hear this from everybody about, Blade. No, we're not going to do Blade. We're not going to start with Blade. We're going to do something. We're going to pick a movie that I actually didn't care for when I first saw it, but I want to watch it again. I want to rewatch it and see how I feel about it now. I want to do Meteor Man, starring Robert Townsend.
Okay, I was thinking the same thing because someone posted a review of Meteor Man in our Facebook group.
Yeah,
and I hadn't seen that movie since I was a kid, so I'm interested to try and find it and have another look at it.
Yeah, I saw it matter of fact, I saw that in the theater. Mm-hmm. Years ago, but I honestly don't think I've seen it since then. And I remember I didn't like it then, but since I'm older now and my attitude's about what he was trying to do, because I remember I didn't like that movie because I wanted my Black heroes to be serious.
Right.
And this was like a kind of comedic kind of take on superheroes or more satiric. But in any case, I want to watch it again, and I want to see if time has changed my opinion. So, yeah, that's what I want to do next time. I want to do Meteor Man.
Okay. And unless I'm mistaken, that really was the first Black superhero movie, wasn't it?
I do believe it was. It was the first Black superhero movie, yeah.
Okay, so that'll be interesting. All right, so join us here next time when we talk about Meteor Man. And that's all for us. Check out Crisis on Infinite Earths. Like Derek said, you can find it on the CW app. And
if you have the CW app, it's on there. And they have it that you can watch it as individual episodes, or you can watch the whole thing. Mm-hmm.
And also, with the CW app, that's free, so you don't have to subscribe to another streaming service or anything.
No. You don't have to subscribe to it. Yeah, you can download it and you can watch it for free.
Mm-hmm. All right, and once you're done with that, pop on over to Facebook group, Superhero Cinephiles. Drop in, let us know what you think. Or you can tweet at us, or you can become a patron and help give us a little bit of support for the show. So we got a Patreon page. You can find it at patreon.com/superherocinephiles. You help us out. You get a little, that helps us keep this show running and helps us keep the lights on.
Yep, give us filthy lucre.
All right, that's it for now. We're going to get on out of here. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Perry. And you guys, good night and God bless.